Welcome everybody to Know the Law. All right. This is the show that we take different state laws from different states and we try to break them down, make them easy for you to understand what that law or the elements of that law is. So that way, if you decide to make certain moves, you'll kind of understand what you're getting yourself into. And hopefully it won't get you hemmed up by going to jail and having to pay them court fees. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to get into the first one. This is the first episode, and we're going to talk about the Georgia simple battery. And again, I like to let everybody know that this is not the way we do this show is not going to be any type of corporate type of vibe. We just down to earth, and we breaking some laws down. They coming straight out of the various state law books. So we're not just picking something and making something up and pulling definitions out of a hat, And so we just breaking things down so you guys know what you're getting yourselves into. Like I said, a real down to earth show, breaking down simple laws. And yeah, we're going to get into it. And the way we're going to rock and get down is we're going to play videos that break down the law. And every now and then I'll be pausing the videos. I'm going to try to get the video pulled up here real quick. We're going to get the video pulled up. And yeah, we're going to get into it. All right. So I hope that you guys learn something. You can pass it on to your family and friends. Okay. And also learn something for yourself. And again, we're going into the Georgia simple battery. All right. We're going to break down what it is so y'all can understand what it is. And again, keep yourself from getting yourself hemmed up. Okay. So yeah, let's pull up this video right now.
About something that happens all the time in Georgia. A heated argument that in a split second can turn into a criminal charge. We're talking about simple battery. And trust me, understanding this law could save you a ton of trouble. You know the scene, right? Things get heated, voices are raised, and then someone shoves someone. It feels like a minor thing, just a push. But is it? In Georgia, that one little action could have some pretty big legal consequences. So where is that line? When does an argument cross over into being a crime? Let's get into it. All right, let's dive right in. First things first, what is simple battery? What does the actual legal definition say? Okay, so the official Georgia code, it actually boils down to two main things. You're looking at a simple battery charge if you either, one, intentionally make insulting physical contact, or two, you intentionally cause someone physical harm.
All right, so simple battery in Georgia. And there's the numbers there, the sections or the law numbers is 16-5-23. And so simple battery is the intentionally making insulting physical contact. All right, that's key. I'm going to break that down in a second. Or intentionally causing physical harm to another. So what is intentionally making insulting physical contact? All right, that sounds pretty interesting. Okay, it involves some type of contact like touching, right? In some form or fashion, right? It says physical contact, but then what's the insulting part? So let's say you have an argument with someone on the street you don't know. You could be at a gas station. I'm just kind of coming up with these scenarios. A gas station. You could be standing outside waiting to go into the movie theater. Everybody's kind of lined up because it's a very popular movie theater. Some kind of interaction goes on and some arguments get started verbally. and it gets to the point where people are maybe getting in each other's faces. And let's say I'm just going to use myself as one of the participants in the argument and the other person. So let's say they're saying something to me, I'm saying something back, and then what I do is, let's say I all of a sudden start poking them in the chest, right? Or I mush them in the face. I take my hand and just mush them in the face. It didn't cause no physical harm. It didn't cause physical injury, no visible bruising or anything like that. But that was an insult. That's insulting, an insulting physical kind of action, right? Pointing their chest, the person's chest, man or woman. I point at you, well, you ain't this, you ain't that. And I just, man, get out of here, right? That's an insulting physical. Let me put
Listen, that word intentionally.
Physical contact, insulting physical contact. We'll play this here in a second. She'll probably explain the same thing, but I just wanted to break that down here. Hold on. All right. So again, that's just a couple of examples. Another example, which could be, you know, a lot of people will probably get into a fight on that one, is intentionally spitting on somebody. That is physical contact, but it's not any physical harm. Although simple battery also includes physical harm, right? Intentionally causing physical harm to another person. But those are kind of like three examples that I can give you to give you a visual idea that if you do any of these things to another person, you could end up getting arrested for simple battery. Now, when it comes to Georgia, and we'll get into this when we do other laws down the road, we might, not might, but eventually we'll do different states, but, you know, we might do later on Georgia assault, because Georgia simple battery and then there, I think it's simple assault, if I'm not mistaken, have a little bit differences to them. That's what's kind of odd to me when it comes to certain Georgia laws, because they could have just take simple assault and put all these things as part of simple assault, but they wanted to break it up. They wanted simple battery, they wanted simple assault, then they wanted aggravated battery, then they wanted aggravated assault. So they want to just take things and break them down instead of just taking maybe 3 charges or 2 charges and just putting all the elements into the battery charges and make them part of the assault charges. You know, but who knows? Maybe down the road, maybe they'll change laws and do that instead of coming up with all these different categories of being assaulted and being physically harmed. But for now, you could get yourself hemmed up if you do something similar to that. Pushing someone, you didn't cause them any physical harm. You know, there's no bruising, there's no injuries, there's no going to the hospital, but you had an issue with somebody and all of a sudden you pushed them or they pushed you. All right. That is intentionally making insulting physical contact. All right. It's insulting to the other person. You mushed them. All right. Mush. That's insulting. All right. You poke somebody in the chest. You know, that while you arguing with them, then you all of a sudden you got the nerve to just mush somebody in the face. You got the nerve to just poke your finger into their chest. You got a nerve to push them as you and that person are arguing. You got a nerve to maybe intentionally you're intentionally doing it, not just by accident, spitting on someone. Some people talk and spit comes out their mouth. You got to prove that was intentional. You know, that's how some people talk. And that's just how things come out their mouth. It wasn't intentional. It just, when they talk, they have things spitting out their mouth. So that's also something to be mindful of. All right. So let's get back into the video.
You intentionally cause someone physical harm. And listen, that word intentionally is the absolute key here. This isn't about accidentally bumping into someone. We're talking about something you did on purpose. So this is where it gets really interesting and honestly where a lot of people get tripped up. Let's look at these two types. First, you've got insulting contact. And this is a shocker for most people. You don't actually have to injure anyone. No, seriously, if the physical contact is just unwanted and provoking, that's it. That's enough.
All right, there you go. It's just an unwanting thing. You didn't want to be mushed. You didn't want to be poked. Somebody poking a finger at your chest, at your forehead. You know, some women like to do that stuff. Put their finger, or back in the day at least. I don't know about if people still doing that now, but women get into arguments, or women and men get into arguments. Although if it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband and wife situation, that's a totally different charge. And we'll get into that Georgia charge on another episode. All right. So unwanted physical contact of a provoking or insulting nature, no injury is required. All right. You could be committing simple battery.
No, seriously, if the physical contact is just unwanted and provoking, that's it. That's enough. The second one, physical harm, is more like what you'd expect, right? Any action that causes harm, even if it's super minor. Let's make this real.
All right, before we play this right here, she's going to give you some real examples to break it down to you. All right, it could be minor, going back to the physical harm, because simple battery is two of these elements. It could be either or. It can be the insulting contact, like we did, like I just broke down, or it can be physical harm to someone, and it doesn't matter, no matter how minor it is. It could be a simple scratch. You could have said something to somebody, grabbed them or something, and you just scratched them on the hand. That's a minor thing, right? But you still could be committing simple battery. All right.
Let's make this real. Okay. Think about an aggressive finger poke in the chest during an argument, or spitting on someone. Yikes. Or even just intentionally shoving someone in a crowd. You could even grab someone's arm to stop them from walking away, or, and this happens all the time, throw a drink on them. See?
Now, that's the last one there. Intentionally shoving. I mentioned most of these. I forgot. I didn't even think about the throwing, but it made me think of a lot of those reality shows, especially in Georgia, where drinks was getting thrown on each other. Mainly it's the women doing it. Sometimes they threw drinks on a man. Sometimes women threw drinks on another woman on the reality shows. And I wouldn't think they would be immune, because they're on a show, to be charged with a simple battery. So just keep those in mind. These real world examples here: aggressive finger poking, spitting on someone intentionally, shoving somebody, grabbing somebody's arm. All right. Intentionally shoving and throw a drink on a person. All right. All of these are some real world examples. Okay.
You could even grab someone's arm to stop them from walking away, or, and this happens all the time, throw a drink on them. See? None of these things really cause a serious injury, but they all fit perfectly under that insulting or provoking umbrella. The act itself is the crime. But wait, it doesn't stop there. Simple battery is usually a misdemeanor, sure, but there are certain situations that can crank up the volume and make things way more serious. We're talking about raising mistakes. A lot. So the fancy legal term for this is a high and aggravated misdemeanor. What does that actually mean for you? Well, to put it simply, the penalties get a whole lot worse. All of a sudden, you're looking at the potential for more jail time and way bigger fines than for just a regular run-of-the-mill misdemeanor. So what are the triggers? What flips that?
Let's go back to that real quick. All right. This charge carries more severe penalties, including higher fines and more jail time than a standard misdemeanor. So those are, if I'm not mistaken, she said the aggravated misdemeanors. And that's even tricky when it comes to the simple battery law, because it's saying that you can also commit aggravated misdemeanors. Simple battery is a misdemeanor charge, but now there's somewhere in the mix to that, you can commit a higher misdemeanor within that simple battery charge. Like I said, Georgia is a very interesting state when it comes to different laws.
We're talking about raising mistakes. A lot. So the fancy legal term for this is a high and aggravated misdemeanor. What does that actually mean for you? Well, to put it simply, the penalties get a whole lot worse. All of a sudden, you're looking at the potential for more jail time and way bigger fines than for just a regular run-of-the-mill misdemeanor. So what are the triggers? What flips that switch from a simple misdemeanor to a high and aggravated one? Well, the law lays out 7 key situations that automatically bump up the charge, and it all boils down to 2 things: who the victim was and where it all went down. You see, the law is designed to give extra protection to certain folks and in certain places. So, for example, if the victim is pregnant or 65 or older, the charge gets escalated. Same goes if the victim is a police officer, a teacher, a sports official, even a utility worker, as long as they're on duty. The location is also a huge deal. Do it on a bus or on school property, that elevates it. And this last one is really, really important. If it happens between family or people living in the same house, well, that's domestic violence. And
All right, before we go on with the video, this is very interesting and it's very key for you to know. All right. So that simple battery that you might have done, that poking of the chest, that's something that left a minor injury. If the victim is 65 years old or older or pregnant, that misdemeanor that you done, that poke of the chest, that spitting on the person's face, that throwing a drink on a person, if they're 65 years old or older, or if that person is pregnant, that simple battery misdemeanor goes up to an aggravated, or can go up to an aggravated misdemeanor charge. All right. So that's one part of that makes it go up. If the person is a police officer that you throw it on, as a teacher, you go, family and want to go to school, mad at the teacher. Teacher said something to the child, and the child said this or that. You go to the school and you throw a drink on the teacher, or you push the teacher, or you mush the teacher in the face, or you decide you want to spit on the teacher. That misdemeanor goes up to an aggravated misdemeanor charge of simple battery. All right. And it says sports official for you guys who have, or girls, ladies or gentlemen who have kids and playing in sports. All right. And you get mad because the ref said or done something you didn't approve of. All right. And you want to go on and get in their face, and all of a sudden you want to mush them in the face. You want to push them, spit on them. All right. You might have one of the drinks in your hand that you got from the concessions, and all of a sudden you want to throw it in their face. You just bumped up that misdemeanor simple battery up to an aggravated misdemeanor charge of simple battery. And then, of course, the location. It also depends on location. The act occurs on a public transit, bus, train, all right, which Georgia has buses and trains. What's that, MARTA? School property. So these are things to keep in mind when you start getting upset and thinking about, I might get and some people don't care, but this is for those who don't want to get hemmed up and maybe want to think a little bit and decide to doing something or moving a little different. And then the relationships between spouse and parents, children, or household members, they say that's domestic. All right. So let's continue on here.
well, that's domestic violence, and it's treated with a whole different level of seriousness. Okay, so we've got a handle on what simple battery is and what makes it more serious. But now, here comes the plot twist. Georgia law has this really fascinating defense, and it's all.
And before we get into that, let me just break this down. Now, you can get charged with simple battery. I'm not going to go into detail. I already explained, and then the video explained pretty clearly between me and the video about how you can get hemmed up with a simple battery charge, all the elements, what you can do to get you caught up, the misdemeanor aggravated. Now, you can have a defense for why you did something, which is interesting for Georgia to have. I don't know how many other states have this. And as we continue with newer episodes, we can probably get into and find out if other states have similar things like this. But Georgia has a defense that you can, let's say you got arrested because you committed a simple battery in whatever form or fashion that we explain. All right, video and myself. And when you get arrested, you can't use the defense with the officer that arrests you, but you can possibly use the defense in court. And the video is going to explain now. I'll add something if I need to. I could explain, but let's see what the video says.
All about what the other person said right before things got physical. Here, that's domestic violence, and it's treated with a whole different level of seriousness. Okay, so we've got a handle on what simple battery is and what makes it more serious. But now, here comes the plot twist. Georgia law has this really fascinating defense, and it's all about what the other person said right before things got physical. Here it is, straight from the law itself. That phrase basically says that if the other person used opprobrious or abusive language, that can be used as a defense. In plain English, it opened the door to argue in court, hey, their words provoked me. It's the legal version of they started it.
Now, let's go back to that really quick. That's very interesting that you can actually use possibly a defense of saying, well, hey, they said something very opprobrious. You got to look up that word. Let's look up that word now while we at it. All right, let's get a simple layman's terms definition of that. Or abusive language. Let me pull this up. Seems like this is a little bit faster here. All right, I have Claude and Chat GPT open. It looks like Claude is being a lot more quicker on the draw with things. So we'll holler at Claude for right now. All right, give me a simple layman's terms definition of the word opprobrious. I think that's how you pronounce it. Let me just make sure here. Since we're here, we might as well break it all down in real time. All right. I believe I spelled it correctly. So let's see what they say here. Opprobrious means harshly insulting or expressing strong public disgrace and contempt towards someone. All right. In plain terms, if someone calls you opprobrious names or makes opprobrious remarks, in other words, harshly insulting remarks or harshly insulting names or expressing strong public disgrace or contempt against you, they're not just being rude, they're going out of their way to shame and humiliate, you in front of others. All right. So we know that goes down out in the streets. People say things and try to embarrass and humiliate people during a confrontation, especially when there's a crowd, to make you look real dumb in the street. And so you can go to court and say, well, they said X, Y, and Z. This is why I attacked them. And you can actually use that as a defense. Now, whether it goes through or not, that's another thing. All right. So let's continue.
Their words provoked me. It's the legal version of they started it. So, opprobrious language. What on earth does that mean? It's just a very old-fashioned, regal way of saying fighting words. And listen, we're not talking about a simple insult or someone being rude. No, we're talking about words that are so vicious, so abusive, so out of line that they're likely to make a reasonable person just snap. And this leads to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? Can words, just words, ever be a legal excuse for getting physical? And the law's answer is a very careful maybe. Let's be crystal clear. This is not a green light. It's not a free pass to get violent just because someone said something you don't like.
So make that clear as well, because I can see that being used like way, people just overdoing it with, oh, they said this and said that, and you start wanting to use it as a defense. Like it says, it's not a yes or a no, it's a maybe. It's a defense for a jury to consider, not a free pass to use force. So because somebody says something, that's not a free pass for you to go upside their head and then go to court and say, well, they said this, and that's why I went upside their head. Okay, so make that super clear, or get that super clear in your head, because don't think that every time you go to court because somebody says something and you're going to use that as a defense for the reason to justify you why you put your hands on somebody, all right, for to have a simple battery charge. It's not that easy, okay?
Does is give you the option to make that argument to a jury, and from there, it's completely in their hands. They have to decide if those words were bad enough to justify what happened next. All right, because this whole area is kind of gray, there are a ton of myths and misunderstandings floating around. So let's do some myth busting, shall we? Okay, myth number 1. You've probably heard this or maybe even bought it yourself. If there's no bruise, no cut, no injury, it can't be battery, right? Yeah, that's totally wrong. Remember what we talked about just a few minutes ago? That whole category of insulting or provoking contact? That's the key. No.
So get that straight. You think that because you didn't injure somebody, that you can't get charged. But we already explained between myself and the video that it doesn't, it can be physical contact that is just simply unwanted. Okay. Don't think because you push somebody or you mush them, oh, all I did is mush them, I can't get charged with that. That's simple battery. All right. Make it very clear. If there's no injury, it can't be battery, right? But we already told you it does not have to be injury involved, because spitting on somebody doesn't injure you, leave cuts and bruises on you. Me mushing you in the face, me pushing you, depending on, what happens after the push. But if it's just a simple shove and you didn't slip or fall on something and bust your head, it's just shove, and then you came back in my face, that's not an injury, but you still, or I still can get charged with battery. All right.
Battery, right? Yeah, that's totally wrong. Remember what we talked about just a few minutes ago? That whole category of insulting or provoking contact? That's the key. No injury needed. That shove, that spit, that drink in the face, that is more than enough to qualify. All right, on to myth number 2, and this one is tied right back to that fighting words defense. If the idea that, hey, if someone insults me, I have the right to get physical. Nope. That is a really dangerous way to think. The fighting words thing, it's a defense, something you argue in court. It is not a guaranteed right. You can stand up and make your case, for sure, but that jury has zero obligation to agree with you. You're literally gambling your freedom on whether 12 strangers think an insult was bad enough. That is a huge risk. So, after all of that, what's the bottom line? What are the practical things you can do to protect yourself and make sure you never end up in this kind of mess? Look, when it all comes down to it, your best defense is just de-escalation. It's about walking away from that argument before it gets physical. It's about keeping your hands to yourself, even when you're furious. You have to remember that the context, who you're arguing with, where you are, changes everything. So when in doubt, just get out. Disengage. Leave the situation. It's really that simple. And all this really leaves us with a
And real quick, a lot of that is hard, I know. For a lot of people, it's hard for somebody to walk away from a heated argument. I can go into a lot of self-defense stuff, but we're not going to go too deep because this is a law channel and we're going to get into different state laws. But walking away from heated arguments, do not initiate physical contact in anger. A minor shove can have major consequences, as we already explained. Hope that's really embedded in your brains. Context, who, where changes the stakes. Okay. Again, 65-year-old person you doing this to, a pregnant person you doing this to, that simple battery misdemeanor goes up to aggravated. It's a police officer, a teacher, utility worker. All right. The location you could be in, you on a bus, you on a train. Shoot, it could probably be airplane as well. Those up that misdemeanor to an aggravated. All right. So keep that in mind too. And then when in doubt, disengage. You might start an argument. Maybe you didn't physically do anything. The person didn't physically do anything to you yet. It might be just time to engage and walk off. But again, I'm not saying that's easy because we all have seen it. People get into something and it went further than just verbal. But you really got to learn how to, like it said in self-defense world, master your emotions. All right. So let's continue.
disengage. Leave the situation. It's really that simple. And all this really leaves us with a pretty deep question, doesn't it? It's like the law in Georgia gets that words can feel like weapons. But by creating this whole fighting words defense, it basically says we're not going to draw the final line. Instead, it hands that power over to a jury. And that's a powerful reminder, right? That in the heat of a single moment, one bad choice can have consequences that could stick with you for the rest of your life.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, know the law. We appreciate y'all, man. And yeah, let me know what you think about this one. And before I get out of here, let me see if I can pull this up. Let me see if it can pull up here. Okay, so that's different. So good. I have a backup. I'm going to pose this question for you guys real quick. Oh, they don't want it that long. All right, let me fix this up here. There we go. And so the question is, which state should I break down next so you know the law? I'm going to give you three choices: Florida, Texas, or New York. Or do you want me to continue with some more Georgia laws? We're going to continue anyway, but I just wanted to get y'all feedback. And you can put all this in the comments. Let me know what you think. Florida, New York, and Texas. Do you want me to break down a law in one of those states? All right. Let me know. Put it in the comments. Let me know if you want me to break down another Georgia law. All right. And I hope this has helped you guys. All right. I hope this has helped you guys out and made you think. Also, like I said, gave you some knowledge that maybe you didn't have before. All right. And we will see you on the next one. This is Know the Law. And I'm out of here. Peace.
Most people think you have to seriously hurt someone to catch a charge. That's not true. In Georgia, something as simple as the wrong kind of physical contact can get you charged with simple battery. And it happens more often than people think. One moment, one decision, one situation. And now you're dealing with the legal system. Courtrooms, charges, consequences. This breakdown shows you exactly what counts and what doesn't, so you don't learn the hard way. Get the full Georgia Simple Battery breakdown right now.